Hello, I'm Van King. This is part 2 of the macro photography using enlarging lenses sequence. Eventually, all of this discussion about lenses and how to adapt them will be used to make the best kinds of photographs by using image stacking. But many of you want to know, how do I get there? What are the steps that I need to go through? Adapting the lenses is what we talked about. How do we get this lens onto this kind of camera? Once it's on that kind of camera, you have to know, why do I want that lens on this camera and how is it adjustable for my needs? Remember, these lenses cannot be focused of themselves. There's no focusing ring where you can focus in and out and actually find the best possible place. You have to put it on some sort of an extension device, and the focus is now predetermined because of how far this lens is from the sensor and how far it is from the object. So one of the ways you do this is to move the camera, and there's a mechanical device that I'll talk about later that moves the camera back and forth. You can also put that mechanical device here. Your object of interest can be put onto a platform and moved, and your camera stays stationary. Of course, that would reduce the vibration of your camera and all of its components. The one thing we talked about earlier is that you can either put extension rings, very simple tubes, they're hollow, nothing special about them, there's no glass inside, or you can use a bellows. The idea is that the cones of focus of the nearest objects in the front focal plane are further away. So you have to literally move your camera lens away from the sensor so that you can intersect the very closest rays that are focusing from this object. Two focal points on a lens, the front and the back. And once they coincide, you have a sharp image. The sizes of these lenses extensions are not terribly important. I can have one that's very short, they unscrew. Let's say I don't need a great deal of extension. All I want is a relatively modest close-up. I can make the tube shorter. I can also put all of these together and have a tube that is going to be this long, and that'll be kind of crazy and probably extends beyond any focal point these lenses will generate. Remember, there's a limit to how much you can extend any one of these lenses. For the most part, this is about the longest extension that I have. It is composed of 3 of these units. 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, there's one missing component here. They're a little bit longer. You can buy a set of these for about $8 delivered on eBay. Prices will probably continue through the future, but if you shop around, they're not expensive. You do not need auto extension rings. These are auto extension rings. These will run you from $70 or $80 up to $125 depending on your brand. And what they do, they're very specific. They have the electronics inside that go on the motor of your lens. Once it's snapped into place, and then it snaps into place with the body of the camera, you have an electrical connection, and the electrical connection will operate your focusing motor in your lens. And if that's important to you, you're not going to do macro work. Macro work is going to be done using manual focus. You don't want this lens motor continuously trying to decide where is the focal point. You choose that, not the camera. The beauty of having no electrical components in these extension rings is that as soon as you screw them into the body of the camera, it says, wait a minute, do you really have a lens there? And when you turn on your camera and watch the little live view here, it will say something like, hey, you don't have a lens. Ensure lens is attached. Press the camera button to activate movie shooting. All right, doesn't matter what you're going to do. This button on this camera is the one that I do. And I won't turn this on yet because, oh yes, I have a lens covering the sensor, so I can turn it on. Always check to make sure when your camera is going to be turned on that the lens is in front of it to protect an excessive amount of light from damaging your light sensor on the interior. If this lens were off and the electronics are activated, then you could potentially damage your camera. So make sure you have this already on, protecting the light sensor before you turn it on. So I'll turn this button, and now it's happy to produce some sort of an image. You can see this finger motion close up. It's out of focus at the moment, but that's what will happen. The camera will be happy. It will take pictures even though it doesn't have any electronic connection to the lens. Some cameras don't let you do that. Some digital cameras don't let you put a lens onto its body unless it has the electronic connections that will operate the automatic focus. Be sure to know which kind of camera you have. You need one that will allow you to put manual focus connections onto your camera so that you can do this sort of setup. The focusing of this lens, as I said, is due to the moving of the camera or the moving of the object. You can do some precision focusing with a bellows. This is what a bellows looks like. It's a little frame. You have a lens snapped into a camera mount. That's all it is. So I've adapted this as a Nikon lens. This is going into an EOS mount. And on this side there is an EOS adapter. Focusing bellows, it is a manual one. It has the Canon mount, it screws in, and it's ready to shoot. This distance is about that much extra spacing that the lens has because of this mechanism in between. And that should get you fairly close to an object. If you want to get even closer, then you increase the length of the bellows just as you would add more extension rings. And this knob will go along the rail, and you have increased the distance from the front of the lens to the camera sensor. Once you get to a place you want to be, you will lock it into place. There's a knob on the other side. You won't have any difference in focus any longer, and you can then move your camera or move the object to where you want it to be. If it isn't quite in focus, you can loosen the locking knob, move the knob that will move the lens until you see sharp focus on your camera sensor. Then you lock it into place and you're ready to begin shooting. This particular bellows I have to tell you about. Bought it recently. It was a $35 bellows on eBay. It's made out of cheap paper. I was so upset about it, I actually gave a negative response. This is not the kind of bellows that will last very long. You should have a bellows that doesn't have cheap paper in it. You need to have what is called bellows fabric. Here's an older kind of bellows. It is made out of a rubberized, cross-grained, high-quality fabric, not a cheap paper. And that will last a long, long time. This will probably start to rip and tear after maybe even a couple of weeks of use. And once you have tears in this, then you get some tape and you start mending it, and before you know it, it looks terrible. You want to have a good quality bellows because you're going to get a lot of action out of this unit. This one has been like this for 25 years. I will continue to use it probably far after this one has worn out. It's better quality. This one is a cheap knockoff. I was sad that I bought it. Just a piece of advice. So the use of a bellows is not very much different than the use of a set of extension rings, except you have a little bit more flexibility. It fits on your camera tripod just as you would expect. You have to have a good quality tripod whenever you do quality photography. I won't even say that you can get away with using handheld shots except under very sports-like or news-like conditions. If you're looking to get the best quality image, you want to print it. You don't want to have things lose sharpness because of movement. That has to be stationary. You have to have a good, sharp image. You'll get that from having all of the right conditions. Stability is important. Of course, we have a problem just with the floor. As I mentioned before, the floor has movement. As you walk along the floor, it will bounce, vibrate, jiggle, and that will jiggle all of your equipment. The best kind of floor is to shoot on concrete, in your cellar, in a garage, even if you have to photograph on a patio hot top in the background. This is going to be better a base than being inside of your house. Of course, you can shoot with lots of light, have very short exposure times, and those vibrations will be minimal as far as your quality issues are concerned. When you're shooting very, very close up, you're using a large magnification factor, and that movement is moving over what appears to be a large percentage of the image area. Even though this may be only a centimeter wide on your sensor, if you move 1%, 5% of that difference, it's only your camera's moving a tiny amount, but it's producing blur and you'll get a poor quality image. Stability is important. This is magnifying your movements. You don't want your movements to ruin your image. So that's basically what you need to know in just increasing the distance from the lens to your film plane or your sensor plane. You can do it with a movable unit, and that will actually let you focus. You can do it with stationary units, which require you to move the camera back and forth, or the object back and forth. There's an alternative method we'll talk about in a different video that you can just change the focus on your camera like this. That's a separate issue altogether. But once you have this kind of setup, then you can go to the next setup, which will be taking multiple images for image stacking. What image stacking will do is take a picture of a slice of the field of view at sharp places of focus. So you'll take a picture here when it's in sharp focus. You will change the focus so that it is here, 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 or you will keep the focus very sharp here, and you'll move the object so that what was focused at sharp plane here, you move the object further, and now this is the sharp focus has stayed the same, but now it's photographing something in the middle of the object. You move the front of the object more, and now you're near the back of the object perhaps, until finally you focus on the very back edge of the object you're interested in and combine all of those sharp focal points using a computer program. Well, thank you very much.